What really happens when a man stops chasing women? It doesn't arrive with drama. It doesn't announce itself. It usually shows up when you're alone doing something ordinary. You realize you've been busy for years, yet nothing actually feels finished. Once you notice that difference, moving forward starts feeling simpler. And that's where this story actually begins. When chasing starts costing you more than it gives, there comes a moment when chasing stops feeling exciting and starts feeling expensive. Not in money, but in energy, focus, and self-respect. At first, the pursuit feels alive. It feels like momentum, even when nothing real is being built. But slowly you realize your days are shaped around reactions, not direction. You are not weak for wanting connection. You are tired because you gave too much attention to something that never promised stability. That kind of tiredness doesn't feel dramatic. It just follows you through the day. A friend of mine once joked that his phone knew his thumb better than his coffee mug. He said it lightly, but the habit stayed with him longer than the joke did. The chase doesn't fail because women change. It fails because you disappear inside it. You stop acting and start reacting. That's when life starts happening to you instead of through you. Epictetus once said, "If you do not choose what you pay attention to, someone else will." That's how your days get shaped without you ever deciding them. Most men don't notice this happening. They only notice it when they're already tired of a life they didn't choose. If you noticed it earlier than most, that's not an accident. The moment you stop chasing, space opens up, not emptiness. Space. You notice how scattered your energy became. You start seeing how much effort went out and how little stayed with you. This is not about becoming distant. It is about becoming centered. It's not about avoiding women or connection. It's about showing up to them without losing yourself. A man who knows where his energy goes starts reclaiming himself. And the moment you stop running outward, something stabilizes inside you. And this is usually the part that makes the next change unavoidable. The first surprise isn't confidence. It's how strange your own schedule feels when no one is tugging on it. When stopping feels wrong at first, you finally sit down after a long day, and instead of feeling relieved, something feels off. You didn't lose momentum, you just weren't being pushed anymore. Chris joked that some evenings he drifted around like a man walking on clouds, unsure what to do next. Your hands reach for the one thing out of habit, then pause because there is nothing urgent to grab. It feels awkward, like standing still at a green light. You almost expect someone to honk. And when nobody does, you realize how often you were living on other people's timing. Before, a woman often filled your calendar without needing to ask. Not because she meant to, it just happened without anyone deciding. Now, no one is pushing you toward the next thing. Being busy had simply been easier. Like keeping the engine running just so you wouldn't have to hear it idle. Some men call that being driven. It's often just being loud enough to avoid deciding. A male dog once sat still for the first time while every scent passed by. Nothing exploded, the world didn't end. He just realized he didn't have to chase every signal to stay alive. That moment isn't very different for a man. When it clicks, some signals only exist to see if you'll react. The funny part is, reacting used to feel like being respectful. He notices when a conversation starts asking too much. And for once, he does not rush to rescue it. He listens a little longer than before, then decides he does not need to explain himself. If someone chooses to be upset about that, he lets it be and keeps moving. Not because the moment was difficult, but because it no longer asked for saving. Some days that decision saves more energy than a full night of sleep. Not because it fixed anything, but because it stopped adding one more thing to carry. No productivity trick ever did that. It wasn't rest that felt strange. It was realizing how often your movement came from momentum, not choice. You expected relief to come from connection. What you feel instead is space. When you stop chasing, life doesn't slow down. And that's when progress starts feeling unfamiliar. Not wrong, just quieter than you expected. What surprised him wasn't the quiet. It was the thought that came with it. If I stop reaching out, will anyone notice? If I stop showing up, will I still matter? That question alone shows how long you've been trying to be noticed instead of being useful. For a moment, it felt like stepping out of the frame. No reactions, no signals, just the fear of becoming easy to forget. That fear is real, and most men turn back right there. Some don't. They stay just long enough to realize their value was never in the noise. If you're still listening, you didn't turn back. If that line landed, you don't need to explain it. A simple like is enough. When you finally see what was there all along, when the chasing stops, things don't disappear. They become easier to notice. And for the first time in a while, noticing felt calm instead of heavy. Staying busy keeps some questions quiet, like what you're actually moving toward and who you're doing it for. Sometimes the answer changes depending on who's in the room. At first, chasing feels like freedom. For a while, it even feels like movement. One day you notice the day ended, but you cannot name a single moment from it. Coffee dates, movies, familiar romantic places. Enjoyable while they lasted, easy to forget afterward. The most memorable part was realizing half your monthly budget was gone before the month really started. At least the receipts were loyal. It wasn't even regret. It was the quiet math of realizing how much effort went into moments that left nothing behind. And that was when he started wondering what actually stayed with him once the spending stopped. Because it's hard to call something meaningful when the best part is the photo you posted. It wasn't a dramatic decision, just a quiet pause where he stopped filling time and let it settle. Last week, he unexpectedly landed a cheap, lucky getaway. No company, just himself. Strangely, it turned out to be the most memorable trip he'd had in years. Because alone, the moment stayed whole, like listening to a song without anyone talking over the chorus. He felt like the main character, not just someone following the plan. Not to escape connection, but to remember what it feels like to choose it freely. No audience, no negotiations, and somehow the day finally felt like his. You see, a man on his own isn't nearly as bad as he once imagined. Nothing breaks, nothing collapses. Life just stops distracting you for a moment. It was like too many tabs open. Most of them weren't urgent, they were just left open. Chasing didn't always start with desire. Sometimes it simply kept you away from things you didn't feel ready to deal with. The truth is, you were never really idle. The books are still there. The grass still needs cutting. Bill once admitted that what he used to call love was really his fear of being alone. He joked that avoiding the quiet of the night was a habit he still hadn't shaken. Staying up late and ordering fast food were just quieter ways to run from it. Over time, things didn't magically improve. They just stopped feeling so heavy. You didn't lose direction. You just replaced desire with something that sounded responsible. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way. The thing you avoid often ends up teaching you the most. And sometimes what you have been avoiding isn't loneliness. It's meeting yourself without an audience." When you realize you've been playing a role, at some point a man stops negotiating with the world and starts noticing how much of himself he adjusted just to be liked. That realization lands quietly, without the sting he expected. He picks up a shirt he once wore to impress someone. It fit fine, He just didn't feel like wearing it for anyone anymore. This time he laughs lightly and puts it back, realizing how little it matters now. He starts seeing how many choices were made to keep things smooth, not because he wanted them, like catching himself agreeing to something he didn't even want, just because it felt easier than explaining why. Robin Williams, a well-known actor loved for making people laugh, once admitted that in relationships he often played along just to be accepted. Men fall into this pattern more often than they realize. Sometimes a yes slips out, not because you meant it, but because it felt simpler in the moment. She was satisfied, but something inside you stayed restless and uneasy. Later, you wonder when agreeing became easier than being honest, and you can't even remember what you got in return for all those yeses. That tension wasn't a flaw, it was a signal you ignored for too long. Some signals don't show up to ruin your mood, they show up to save your time. That feeling doesn't need fixing, it just needed noticing. Once you see it, something loosens. Not confidence, just the ease of not having to perform anymore. When fewer people start making sense. He used to show up at every event and party. After he decided to stop chasing, he began turning some down simply because they no longer felt exciting to him. He didn't explain himself. People could take it however they wanted. It no longer mattered to him. That felt lighter than expected. And for the first time, being misunderstood didn't feel urgent. You realize you don't miss people. You miss the version of yourself that was trying to be easy to like. Life kept running smoothly, like a train that doesn't stop just because one passenger missed the station. Not everyone disappears, only the ones who expected constant access. He later noticed that a woman he once pursued was quietly following his profile. It felt less like curiosity and more like checking if she still counted. It's funny how checking on others is sometimes just checking on ourselves. Now the circle is smaller, but the time feels better spent. It reminds you of the people who have been there long before all the noise. He is more present with the people who stayed. And for the first time, it mattered more than being seen. Some men realize this early, others only see it later. Which one are you right now? If you feel like answering, write it the way you'd say it to yourself. And once that answer settles, something else becomes easier to see. Other habits shifted too. He started spending more time moving his body and taking care of himself. He no longer stood in front of the mirror, wondering if he looked good enough. The days feel simpler, and you stop adjusting yourself for them. And that's when the next test shows up. What you do with the extra space when nobody is asking for it. When desire stops making decisions for you, desire stays. It just doesn't get to move things around anymore. You still notice beauty, you still feel interest, but something changes in how far it gets to go. Before, desire used to reroute your plans. A late night turned into a short night. A quiet weekend turned into a negotiation with yourself. It felt like eating the day in fragments and never feeling full. You weren't hungry. You were just chasing a quick hit of feeling chosen. Now you don't let desire pull you wherever it wants anymore. Ty noticed it while standing in line at a cafe. Someone caught his eye. The moment passed. He ordered his coffee and went on with his day. That used to bother him more than he admitted. Not the absence of interest, the lack of disturbance. That was when he realized desire no longer beat him in a fair fight. He started noticing how often he used to lose without realizing there was even a contest. That part took a moment to sink in. He let it make noise and chose not to respond. Like Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Funny how stepping back can look like strength from the outside. You don't become colder, you become harder to pull off course. Wanting stays. It just stops deciding what you trade for it. And when you stop trading, you find out how expensive your habits really were. When doing nothing starts working, you expect to feel bored when you stop chasing. Instead, you feel lighter. That caught him off guard. What most men fear isn't boredom. It's realizing how little was actually missing. That realization hits harder than loneliness. You spend less when you stop trying to keep things moving. Your mind relaxes when it stops rehearsing conversations that never happen. You once made time, convinced your attention mattered. Turns out nothing was really waiting for it. If it wasn't you, someone else replied, life keeps going. The world doesn't pause when you step back. Warren Buffett once said that doing nothing is often harder than doing something. He learned that not every moment needs action to be valuable. Markets work that way, so do relationships. Not every move improves the outcome. Sometimes the advantage comes from waiting one step longer than usual. In real life, that one step is where you notice if you actually want it or just want to feel wanted. The same move feels different when you're no longer trying to prove something. At first, it feels strange when no one notices you're gone. You almost assume that's what loneliness feels like. That's usually when you realize how much effort used to go into being visible, not valuable. Then you see it gives you something back. Time to focus inward instead of staying busy with everything outside. After 3 months of not pursuing anyone, Thomas said he slept better, felt more even, and noticed something else. His money wasn't just staying put. It finally had somewhere to land. That part made perfect sense. It's a bit ironic, but in today's economy, that's become a practical reason many men step back from dating. Decisions feel simpler. Small choices stop turning into debates. Evenings stopped asking for upgrades. Dinner didn't need a storyline. It just needed to end well. He ended up buying himself a new piece of tech, simply because he wasn't spending on gifts anymore. From now on, he feels at ease, without trying to be anything extra. Nothing fancy changed. Life just stopped asking for upgrades he never needed. That's why doing nothing works. When life no longer needs a replacement, most men rush into the next connection thinking it will quiet something. This isn't about pushing anyone away. It's about not using someone else to drown out your own noise. What surprises them is how loud the rush actually was. It wasn't about dating or not dating. It's about giving evenings a chance to end without explaining themselves. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence on the future." That's why simple evenings start feeling complete again. Not because life got smaller, but because it stopped asking for a highlight reel. Tom realized that since he stopped dating, his days ended with relief rather than regret. Dinner was simple, a bit of entertainment, a few pages of a book, then sleep. No stories to overthink, nothing to reschedule the next day. The next morning didn't begin with catching up. Nights started doing their job again after a long day of work. That was when he realized how much energy used to go into moments that led nowhere. Nothing was waiting for him anymore. Another man whose work requires deep thinking and creative design said that once he stayed home after work, focus returned and progress started showing up day by day. Work got done earlier than usual and everything started running more efficiently. He joked that if he had known, he would have stopped wandering around much earlier. Nothing about it felt extreme. It just worked better. Do these stories feel familiar to you? When a man starts keeping his evenings simple, something shifts. Being close stopped feeling urgent and started feeling intentional. And choices feel lighter when they aren't trying to fix anything. That's why the next shift hits hard. You stop managing impressions and start living your real mood. When life stops asking you to perform, there comes a point when nothing needs to be proven anymore. Not because you won, but because the question itself stopped mattering. Decisions land faster when you are no longer trying to impress anyone. After a small gathering with friends, Daniel gave a woman a ride home since it was on his way. She was attractive, the kind of moment many men would read as an opening. But that night, Daniel only felt tired. He parked, wished her well, and drove off without looking back. For once, he didn't stay to play a part he didn't feel like performing. The old urge to impress fades. What replaces it is respect for your own time. You still want things. You just want them without trading your dignity. That night, Daniel smiled briefly at his reflection and went to bed, not proud, just comfortable, because for once he had been honest with how he felt. He slept deeply, without replaying conversations or imagining endings that were never promised. The alarm came the next morning, and he got up without negotiating with himself. Next morning, when he stepped out the door, nothing needed selling anymore. And for the first time, he wasn't playing a role he'd have to keep up tomorrow. That's when life finally felt like something he could live, not manage. If this way of living makes sense to you, you'll recognize the men who stay here. You didn't lose anything by stopping the chase. You just stopped paying for things that never stayed. Nothing dramatic changed. Your days simply began to belong to you again. You still notice, you still want, but fewer moments get to decide your direction. And once life stops asking you to perform, you realize something quietly powerful. You were never behind. You were just running in circles. Now you're not. That's where this story ends, and where your life actually starts.